welcome to design number 43. Today we're going to talk about using that busy background paper. You can see here I have a sheet from Pinkfresh Studio that has a couple pretty predominant floral clusters. Sometimes these can be hard to use on a page, but really it should be just a starting point for you to inspire your page design. So because I have those two floral elements in the top and bottom corner there of the page, I'm going to use that as my starting point and add my photos and my embellishments in the middle to kind of create a bit of a, I guess, is it not horizontal, a diagonal pattern. I'm also going to make sure when I go through the page design that I keep my other patterns that I include on the page minimal. I am going to add in this bold stripe here that's on this journaling library card, but aside from that I'm not going to really add in a whole lot of other pattern paper, and even some of these layering pieces you can see I'm using here are pretty neutral and they're tone on tone. So I'm not going to add a whole lot of extra pattern because those floral pieces there are pretty predominant, but they do have a lot of value. And the idea for the page is really to take those two floral areas as well as the photos and the embellishments and really create a cohesive design from that paper. So you can't really tell that the paper itself was printed that way when you're done. That's kind of the key. So now I'm just sorting through some of my embellishments. There's some really great ones that go with this collection here. And so I'm just sorting through some of the more everyday pieces that I think will go with my work photos here that I have. And I'm just going to start layering some of those things together. So when you're trying to use up an embellishment pack, this is another great way to get that incorporated into a page because you have already a lot of the items in the background that are already really busy. So you don't need to add a whole lot more paper. You really just need to add some layering embellishments and bits like that. I'm going to add my photos down and then really do a lot of the work around that. The photos there in the middle of the page are a great place to start because you have those two clusters on either corner, and it's really going to help bring everything all together at the end of the project. So I'm just going to tuck in some pieces here. I love these little photo tabs that are like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I thought that would go really great with my work project that I have here. So I'm going to adhere some of those down in a little bit of a row here, and I love the fact that it's a little bit of a rainbow as it works across the page. And so now I'm just really deciding all my different layering bits that I want to add to my project. So I'm going to go through and just add some of these things with foam tape as well as tape runner. And you can see I'm just using a roll of foam tape by Adhesives by 3L, and it's really good if you want to actually fold it upon itself to make your embellishments a little puffier than normal, or if you want to keep them a little bit flatter, you can do that by just ripping the tape off itself. So I'm adding embellishments and I'm trying to balance out the color. So because I don't have a lot of that red color that's in the collection in those floral pieces, I'm going to add that in the middle there of the layout. Now, the next thing you want to do is really enhance what you have. So depending on the pattern paper that you have, your result will be a little different. But in this case, there's a really great floral pack that goes with this collection. So I'm actually going to use the standalone flowers to enhance those flowers that are printed on the page. It's also going to give me the opportunity to incorporate smaller flowers that I can use to weld into my design. So you can see here, I'm just going to work with the larger flowers first and just start foaming those up and having them stick overside of the same kind of color grouping that I have from what's printed on the paper. I'm going to use foam tape for all of this because I really like the dimension that this is bringing. Because I foam taped my photos, that dimension of the flowers is going to bring all the elements on the top kind of layer all together. I am working, initially I was just working with size as my kind of reasoning for the flowers, but then I decided that tone on tone is another great way to incorporate this busy pattern without it being super, super busy. So I'm just going to stick with the same color scheme for each of the flowers that are printed on the paper, as well as the ones that I am adding on the top. And then once I have all those flowers filled in, you can see now that I'm adding an extra of that same element. So in this case, it's flowers. So I'm going to use some of the more smaller flowers to kind of cascade away from those two broken up floral groups and create them more towards my center photo embellishment area. I'm going to make sure things overlap a little bit slightly so it really looks like there's a cascade of flowers from one corner to the other, and I want things to overlap my papers, my photos, my embellishments. So I don't want it to be like two broken up chunks of the floral area. So I'm really creating more of a long diagonal cascade of flowers without really having to do a lot of work because some of that pre-printed work is already done for me. And I'm just going to add some elements to that to give them a little bit more height and depth kind of like adding up to my flower. So you can see some of these little extra clusters I'm putting in to really just fill in some of the gaps between those two separate floral clusters and make it more of one larger kind of, I like to think of it as an imaginary floral sprig from top corner to bottom corner. So at the end, you really won't be able to see where the pre-printing starts and where it ends. So again, I'm just starting with the large ones first, working my way down to the smaller ones, and adding in anything I can to kind of layer those pieces. I'm not going to add a second layer to every single one of the items on the floral piece that's printed on the background paper. I am going to leave some of them flat, and that just gives a little bit extra dimension. So now that I have that piece done, I'm just really adding a few little extra embellishments. I don't want to go too crazy here because I do have a lot going on with all the puffed up flowers and the different stickers and layering pieces that I used earlier. But there's almost too many good choices in this collection not to choose. I had a hard time restraining myself, to be perfectly honest. There's some really great chipboard pieces and stickers, and I had a hard time reining myself in. But there's a lot to choose from, so choose what makes the most sense and just tuck them in, trying not to go a little overboard because those floral sections are pretty predominant. I am going to add another little tag in here, so I ripped off some of my earlier work. And I will add them back in. It's just to add a little bit more height into that corner that I thought was kind of missing. And I'll tie some twine into that later on. Now I don't want to do a whole lot more, I think, at this point, so I'm just going to continue that tone on tone color scheme using some of these enamel dots in the collection just to add that center in the middle of each of the flowers in the same color that it is. So if it's pink, it's getting a pink enamel dot, blue, it's getting blue, etc. And that's just another way to kind of add more of the dimension and really almost tone down the flowers. So instead of this blue flower, for example, having that little pop of orange, it kind of melts away a little bit by just having that teal on teal kind of color. From there, I'm not going to add a whole lot else to this page because I really do feel like there is quite a bit going on, but you can really see now with the enamel dots and those smaller flowers tucked in that everything just kind of cascades all together. I'm going to add one little last sticker. And I think that is all for my project. So, oh, sorry, you're wrong. I'm wrong. It's my title is what I forgot. Now, the key with the title is I'm adding that in underneath my photo cluster and right beside the flower. So it's really bringing everything together, filling in that last little section that might have been a little bit missing. So I'm going to add in my little title, layering the part of the title, this little sub-sentiment here on one of the tags that are there, as well as underneath. And so you can see I really have a diagonal design from one bottom corner all the way to the top, and there's a complete flow. So there's a bit of a close-up here of the floral clusters. I did add some black ink in later on just to add some black to ground out the page. I really love how this looks, that you really can't see where those printed flowers started and where they ended. Were they die cuts that I added, or were they meant to be that way? So I hope you give this a try. There's a lot of different ways you can incorporate this into your next project, and I'll see you again next month. Bye-bye.